everyone, and welcome back to Muddy Mint. Today we're going to be doing something really fun. We're going to make a very simple soap. It's going to be a 100% tallow soap. That means that tallow is going to be the only oil in this soap. And there's not that many oils that you can do this with. You can do it with olive oil, coconut oil, tallow, lard. Maybe there's others, but tallow, 100% tallow, is a really popular soap right now. And I've actually never used tallow before. So I'm super excited to dive in and get started. Okay, so recently I was getting some supplies from Soaper's Choice and I saw this tallow on there and I just kind of spontaneously decided to get it. I've been hearing a lot about tallow soaps lately, and especially 100% tallow, and I am always super excited to try new ingredients. And even though all of our ingredients have been vegan so far to date, our oils I should say, we have used goat milk and honey in a lot of our soaps. But our soaps are palm oil free, and tallow is an excellent way to harden up your bars. So I was really excited to try it. I got this big container, so I'm kind of committed. But yesterday I made my very first tallow soap and it went beautifully. So I'm going to make the next batch on camera with you guys. All right, the first thing I did is I mixed up my lye water solution. We are providing a recipe, by the way, for the soap. It's very straightforward and you can do it yourself in soap calc if you're familiar with soap calc. If you are not familiar with soap calc, we do have videos on that, but basically it is a lye calculator video. So remember that when you're making soap, you always need to recalculate the lye if you're using a different amount of oil, if you're using a different oil. If you're making a tallow and shea butter soap, for example, you can't use the same amount of lye as you would in this particular recipe. So this recipe is 30.5 ounces of tallow, which is 865 grams. So that's our entire oil batch. And I'm going to be making it in this mold right here. This is an Amazon mold that a lot of people ask me about. It's very lightweight and feels kind of flimsy. I'm definitely more of a fan of the Nurture soap mold, which is this one right here. You can definitely feel the difference, but I made soap in this yesterday and I was pleasantly surprised. Other than the size of the bar, it actually behaved beautifully. I think this mold is $11 on Amazon, so it's a great option if you're just starting out. All right, so that's my 30.5 pound mold, basically. You can fit the same amount in either one of these molds. I'm also going to include down below a calculation on how you figure out how much oil to use in your soap, because I did that for this particular mold, so I'll share those calculations with you. All right, the next thing I did is I mixed my lye water. Now, this is not a 50-50 lye water solution. I actually used 4.1 ounces of lye, which is 116 grams, and 8.2 ounces of water. So in this soap, we're only going to be using water. So that is why we have 8.2 ounces of water, 4.1 ounces of lye. And so it's a 2-to-1 water to lye ratio. Now, if you're new to making soap and you're watching this video, there's a lot of videos out there on how to mix lye and water together. It is something that you really need to be careful about. There's a lot of safety concerns. You need to be wearing the right equipment like safety glasses, which is why I have these on right now. Gloves, you need to cover up your skin, all that good stuff. We're not going to get into that in this video. There are a lot of videos that do get into that, so you can definitely check that out. And my book, The Natural Soap Making Handbook, talks about this in detail as well. But basically, I had my lye in one container, my water in the other, and I poured my lye into my water. Never go the other way around. Always pour the lye into the water. And I did this about an hour ago, and it's been sitting here cooling ever since. I should have my gloves on for this. I will check the temperature of this lye water and see where we're at. I usually make my soap between, I don't know, I would say 85 and like 110 is maybe the highest I would go. When I made the soap yesterday, it behaved really beautifully, so I'm not too worried about it. All right, this is at about 109, so maybe a little bit on the warm side. The other thing I did is I melted my tallow. So this is a 2-liter container. This is a 1-liter container, so that's perfect for this recipe. I put my tallow in here and man, it was incredible when I was scooping it up. First of all, it's extremely yellow. Let me scoop some for you so you can see it. Did I say yellow? I meant white. It is extremely white. A lot of people ask me, how do you make a white bar of soap? Well, my new answer is use tallow. This is deodorized tallow, so I'm not sure what the grass-fed tallow looks like, or if you render your own tallow, it may not be this white, but this created a super white bar of soap, and it's almost like butter. It's way softer than shea butter, but it results in a very hard and creamy bar. So those are the two main properties of tallow, hard and creamy. So that's the properties that it gives to soap. And I'm thinking that I'm going to be doing a lot of experimenting with this tallow. I'm starting with a 100% tallow bar because it's really fun to see what a bar feels like when it's just that oil in there. I also wanted to try this mold, so I'm doing kind of two new things at once. Next time I make a tallow soap, I'll probably end up adding a few different oils to add some properties like nourishing properties, some more bubbliness, maybe a little coconut oil, some castor oil in there. But anyway, this is a really fun place to start. I think that when you're starting to make soap, it's always nice to start simpler and then add on and see what you like. I would say that it's good to start with a one oil soap, and I think that this tallow soap is a perfect place to start. 100% olive oil soaps are a little bit more complicated. Coconut oil soaps require more superfat, so this one is actually really, really easy. And I'm just mixing it with water and lye. So let's check our temperature here. All right, this is at 104. So yesterday when I made this soap, I did add some lavender essential oil. I think today I'm going to leave this one unscented and just keep it super simple, just to see what the bar is like without a scent. If you do want to add scent to this particular bar, I have information on how much to use of these essential oils. This is Lavender 4042, which I got from Bulk Apothecary. And this is approximately the right size that you need for this recipe. And then this is the Orange 5-fold. Don't use this if you want a white bar of soap because this is going to turn your batter kind of orangey colored, or maybe more of a yellow. But the lavender is clear, so it's going to be perfect if you want a white bar of soap. So I did use lavender yesterday, and I'll show you what those bars look like and see if there's actually a color difference. I don't think there's going to be a difference at all. But anyway, these are from Bulk Apothecary. I will link those as well. I also got a new stick blender, friends. This is a small stick blender that I got just for home soap making videos for smaller batches. This is the stick blender I started with way back when. It was a Cuisinart Smart Stick. So I got the exact same one. I wanted to test it out to see if it would be good for beginners. This is from Amazon as well. And I tried it out yesterday and it was fantastic. My original Cuisinart stick blender lasted for, I don't know, I want to say like 4 years or so with very intense use. And then eventually it started creating bubbles in my batches, but it was a really, really great investment. So we're going to be using that today. All right. I got to check my temperatures again because I forget where I was at. All right, 103, and this is at 108. So they're both under 110, and from having made this soap before, I know that this soap behaves really, really well. It does not accelerate at all. So you know what? I think I'm just going to go for it. Now, if you're adding essential oil, I would do it in this step now. I had yesterday 1.8 ounces of lavender, or 51 grams of lavender in this particular batch. And that's based on 1 ounce per pound of oils, just so you're aware. If you don't want a very strong smell, you can use half that. Or if you don't want to, spend a ton on essential oils, and you'll still get a nice lavender scent out of it. All right, let me move some things around and I'll be back to make the soap. All right, I had this mold sitting behind me and I just wanted to mention that you can use cavity molds like this. If you use a loaf mold, obviously you're gonna have to cut this soap. If you use a cavity mold like this, and this actually ends up being about the same size bars as this mold creates almost like a squarish bar of soap. It's actually a really nice shape. Okay, let's connect our stick blender together. You want to make sure this snaps into place. I noticed that sometimes it didn't make that snapping sound, so you just definitely want to make sure that's on securely. This stick blender has a low and a high setting, so I'm going to put it to low right now. You do need to press this lock button on the side while you're also pressing the other one, but it's really easy to do. This is a lot more ergonomic. I've seen some models where you have to press on top and the button at the same time, but this, it almost feels like the same button. You just got to make sure you press it down and then it'll go. All right. That's the low setting. If you're new at using a stick blender, definitely test this out, maybe with some water first. Or with the oils, just to get used to it, you know? Stick blender is kind of powerful, so it's good to get used to it first. The hardest parts of soap making are making the lye water, because that part is always scary for a lot of people that are new, and then figuring out how long to stick blend. So we'll talk about the stick blending a little bit in this video. All right, here we go. I'm gonna pour this slowly, and I have this set to low. I'm going to pulse the stick blender while I pour it, and I'm pouring down the shaft of the stick blender. Another tip, see how tippy that is? Just take that off when you're not holding on to it. All right, and get the rest of this lye water in here. This step isn't really necessary if you feel like you got most of the lye out, but I see a little bit left in here, so I'm just gonna get it all out. All right. Now with the stick blender, you wanna go slow. You don't wanna overdo it here. I'm gonna put it on high now. If you're new, just do a little bit. I mean, just a few seconds, mix it around. Look at your batter, see what's happening. Right now I can see that things got a little bit more homogeneous. The color's homogenized a bit, but only a little bit. It still looks like it's separating when I stop stirring. All right, that was a little bit longer. It's starting to feel a little bit thicker. I like the feel of it now. One thing you can do rather than pulling the stick blender out, because the second you pull the head of the stick blender out and you put it back in, you're introducing air bubbles. So I don't like to do that. I like to use a separate spatula and just kind of go around and drizzle it on top. Now, it's hard to catch this on camera, but you can kind of see that this is leaving a little bit of a trace. We call this trace. So you're drizzling the batter on top of itself, and you can kind of see it stay up there for a little bit of time before it falls back through. So that's trace, and right now we have what I would call a light trace. So I'm gonna go a tiny bit more, even though normally I would probably just pour this, but I wanna show you what a heavier trace looks like. What I like about this batter, this tallow batter, is that it's very forgiving. So for somebody that's new, I feel like you can't really go wrong with this batter because it's pretty easy to handle. Like right now I can see, and again, this might be hard to see on the camera, but I can see definite trace where I'm not questioning, like, can I really see the drizzles on top? Yes, I absolutely can. So that means it's time to pour. Everything is a homogeneous color, which I like. I'm gonna take this out, just clean it off a little bit. Make sure we get all the soap off of there. And again, you wanna undo this. If you're working in your kitchen, by the way, definitely don't put this on the kitchen counter like that. Not a good idea. Definitely have protection down on your countertops. When making lye, it's always good to make lye in your sink if you're brand new. That way, if you have any spills, you don't have to worry. All right. So here we go. We're literally just going to pour this in. Some people apparently worry that their tallow soap is going to have a smell, but remember that when things saponify, a lot of the scent goes away. anything that you put in a soap that smells really strong probably will not last saponification. So you might smell it now when you're making it, but once the soap is done and cured, you won't be able to smell it. All right, this batter is beautiful, and it is so white, you guys. I mean, you can see it probably on camera, how white this is. When you're working with natural colorants, it's really nice to have a white base like this to work from, because then your colors are more likely to be true. If you have a more yellow base, like an olive oil base, especially if it's extra virgin olive oil, for instance, I'm just going to tap this down. If it's extra virgin olive oil, then your base will probably be more yellow. And a lot of people have asked me, like, how did you get your soap so white? I use refined shea butter, and I also use refined olive oil. So that's a question I get a lot in my email. And I'll probably do an FAQ one day on, common questions, but sometimes I try to cover them in videos as well. All right, we're done. That was super duper easy, and it's going to be an awesome bar of soap. If you want to texture the top here with a spoon, you absolutely can. I do that in almost every single video, but I think I'm going to leave this one flat. So we'll be back tomorrow to unmold this. I'm just going to let this sit here overnight, and in 24 hours, I will be back to unmold and show you what our soap looks like. All right, friends, we are back to cut this soap. And I wanted to show you this little setup that I have here because I did elevate this soap a little bit. This is basically one of those things that you use to cool your bread or, raise your pots or whatever in the kitchen. So I already had this. So what I did is I decided to raise my mold a little bit. And the reason that this is good is because it just helps things get less hot. So when you use a mold like this, especially if you're going from silicone to wood, wood is insulating. And so the bottom of your mold actually gets really hot. And when you have it sitting on the table like this, you'll notice that if you move it, the table is just super hot in this one spot. Because again, after you put the soap in, it starts saponifying, and that creates heat. And so your soap will actually warm up. And you don't want it to warm up too much, because what ends up happening is that you can get cracking, or it's just a one oil soap, and tallow is really, really hard. And so this soap sets up very quickly. And if there's too much heat, you can end up with some cracking and maybe, a pretty intense gel ring on the inside. And so what I did is I wanted to keep the soap more white. So I just raised it, and I just wanted to point that out for anybody that's new to soap making. Temperature is really big in soap making, so it's important to keep your temperature cooler unless you want your soap to gel. And that's kind of a more advanced soap making technique. If you're a soap maker, you know what that means. But all right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to unmold this soap, and it looks really great, nice and white, and I can tell that it's really hard. I can see that the edges of the mold are starting to come off. So that's really nice. They're not sticking to the mold, basically, is what I'm saying. And this is a new to me mold, so it's been fun to kind of see how it works. This actually works really great. You can see already that the mold is coming off from the sides very easily. And when you're unmolding a soap, basically what you're trying to do is to move the mold away from the soap, kind of break that seal up. And so now we've broken the seal on the edges and on the sides, and now you need to get the bottom. And the way to do that is basically the way I do it, is it's just kind of coming out, but usually I use my palm to push on the bottom here, but this one is coming out really beautifully. So that's handy. Now, not all soap behaves like this, by the way. Tallow, again, is really, really hard, so this set up really well. If you're using softer oils, you might find that the soap is sticking to your mold, in which case you may want to remove the edges and the sides here and just let it breathe for a little bit. Just let it harden up. But the tallow soap is really behaving really beautifully. Now, this tallow bar does set up quickly, so I am cutting it a little bit sooner than I would normally cut soap. It is morning here, and we made the soap yesterday afternoon, so it's not quite 24 hours. I see that I've got a little bit of some edges that are looking a little bit messy. So what I'm going to do is just use my handy dandy peeler And actually, I'll leave this up here. I always have this bucket with my little scraps and a peeler in here. I'm going to just quickly go along the edges, and you want to do this very gently. You're not trying to remove too much soap. You're just kind of removing that sharp edge. And it's looking pretty good. The last soap I made like this actually was more brittle. All right, so now I'm going to clean this up a little bit. This is why I have this little bench scraper tool. It's just really nice to clean off your table with. All right, and I got my old soap cutter for this. And the reason I'm trying to use some of these smaller tools or more beginner tools is just to show you guys what I was using when I first started making soap. Because once you get to production soap making, you move to larger equipment, and it's just nice to see what works that doesn't require such an investment. All right, so I'm checking my little guitar string. I got this cutter from Bud's Wood Shop. I don't think Bud makes wood cutters anymore. They're mostly metal, but he is on Etsy, and he is Bud Hafner on Etsy. So if you're interested in one of his cutters, and they are awesome, you can get them at different widths if you're using a multi-bar cutter, but this one's nice because you just basically change this little knob to change the width of the bar that you want. And so I wanted 1 1/4 inch bars, so that's what I set mine to. All right, here we go. Oh, it's cutting like butter. All right. I'm curious if there's any gel in here, and there isn't. It looks really, really nice in there. So that's a beautiful white bar of soap. It is just a little bit tacky still, but that's normal with soap. It's going to harden up over time. You do need to cure these bars for about 4 weeks. So just keep that in mind. The saponification is done in about 48 hours. So technically you could test out your soap 48 hours after you made it, but water will continue to evaporate from these bars over time, and that's what makes the bars hard. Now, every time I make a brand new soap, and that I've never made before, like this particular soap, it's nice to think about what you would do differently next time, because typically the first time you start with a recipe, it doesn't really go exactly as planned, or perhaps you can think of a few things that you might tweak. And with this particular recipe, I made it 3 times. And the first time it was a little bit too brittle. The second time it got a little bit too hot and got a gel ring. And then this third time, it's obviously worked out a lot better and it looks really beautiful. But obviously this soap is a little bit particular to temperature specifically. So what I would do to try to cut down on a little bit of that brittleness is probably add milk to the soap. I love adding milk to any soap. It really enhances your soap quite a lot. So I would probably just try adding cow milk in here, just whatever I happen to have in the fridge. So I would probably do that and see how it turns out. I'd also be interested in just adding different kinds of oils. I'm going to do a lather test on these in about 4 weeks and just kind of see how it goes, because I am very curious about the lather, because I wouldn't expect the soap to lather super well since it's 100% tallow. But I think it's just going to feel really gentle and luxurious. So, man, these bars look gorgeous. They do have a little bit of a blowout. You kind of get this little blowout when you cut, and you can do this with your finger to get rid of it. But what I'm going to do, I usually just leave it, and then I just use that peeler tool to get those edges nice and smooth. That's kind of optional. You don't have to do that. All right, so if you cut your bars at 1 1/4, you basically get, let's see, 9 bars of soap out of this loaf. And they're a super cute size. They're just like a little square, which I really like. And they fit in your hand really well, kind of on the smaller side. I would probably guess these are 3.5 ounce bars, maybe actually probably 4 because they're cut thicker. So, all right. So then you want to make sure that you loosen the screw up here. You don't want to store your cutter in tension on the string. And I'm just going to wipe this down a little bit before I put it away. So there you have it. There's the tallow bars. If you are interested in adding milk to these soaps, we do have a video on how to add milk to your bars. And remember that the recipe is in the description box below. And if you want a lot more detail, like full soap making instructions, then definitely go to our website, muddymint.com. I'll have a link below directly to the recipe. It'll be free. It'll be the exact same recipe you see here on YouTube, but it'll just have a lot more information on it, including specific soap making steps. So if you're interested in that, definitely go check it out and check out our milk video next. All right, have a great day. Bye.